Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for spending not only a little bit of dollars, but also more importantly, your time to hear from an Agri-marketer of the year from 2018, David Lazarenko. David is going to be presenting today the evolution of Agri-marketing 2.0, really. In 2019 at Best of CAMA event in Ontario, when we were all in person, he presented the inaugural version of his trends in agri-marketing. So I want to thank David for spending his time and some expertise with us with the CAMA family. I also want to thank the Manitoba Board of Directors for all volunteers for helping to put some of this together. We are a hardworking group, as many of the chapters are across the country, so I want to thank them. And then I guess we'll go into members and partners. So I want to just do a shout out to CAMA Manitoba corporate members in particular. And so we've got 5 corporate members that have invested in 6P, where their teams are able to join many of the meetings as part of their corporate membership package. And I also want to do a shout out as well to Bayer and Glacier Farm Media. They are our first 2 CAMA National Sustaining Partners. This is a program in helping National financially support all of the national initiatives that we're working on. And there are many of them, and you probably hear me talking about them quite often, but they're always worth repeating. We are doing a mandate evolution. That's one of our big ones. That's going to be launching in actually November at the Best of CAMA virtual event. Our evolution is really going to be focused on being more inclusive of Canada's entire value chain, food value chain. And so that's a big initiative that National is taking on and for the betterment of our entire membership and really industry. We also have a new mentorship program that just launched as well. If you don't know about this, check your email. It just went out, I think, yesterday or today, with some great opportunities for both mentors and mentees. We have our CAMA Academy, which is our online resource of agri-marketing expertise. And that our expertise comes from our members specifically who are experts within agri-marketing. And so you can check that out on our website. That's an ongoing project that we are looking to build more of our member knowledge and thought leadership for that resource for all of us. And then finally, we are working towards a national agri-marketing conference. This has been on the back burner for the last year or 2 for obvious reasons, but it is something that National continues to work on, knowing that professional development and networking are really 2 of the main reasons why members are members of CAMA. And so a National Agri-Marketing Conference, which will be built around Best of CAMA event, is something that we're hoping for in the future. And then, of course, we also have professional development events such as the one we're attending today. And at the end of the day, we need to communicate all this stuff to you, our members. And so we need to be investing in our communications as well. So Bayer and Glacier Farm Media, as mentioned, are the first 2 that have signed on with the financial support for all of these initiatives. So we thank them. I want to give a little bit of a plug also to our virtual Best of CAMA. This is coming up on November 17th. It is virtual, same situation as it was last year. Actually, so it's November 18th is the actual gala event, but we have our CAMA Professional Development Seminar, which is on November 17th. November 17th will be, I think, a 2-hour session where we will be featuring a handful of our best of show winners from last year, who will be giving case studies on what made their projects worthy of being best of show, and obviously all the agri-marketing process that went into those successful projects. We also have some other dates on the screen. So we are now accepting entries. You can go to cama.org to start entering. I know that many of us leave that to the last minute, but you can do that right now if you're so inclined. The deadline is September 24th. And just a quick shout out as well to Tom Powell Design, a Manitoba member of CAMA, who for the 2nd year has volunteered their time for the graphic design work for the Best of CAMA. So a thank you to them. This is not a regular webinar that we're doing today. This is a professional development event. So we have a bit of a schedule because it's a longer event. So we wanted everyone to be aware of what today was going to look like. So obviously we are at the beginning. Then I'm going to turn over to David to be doing his doing his presentation for us, which is going to be about an hour long. We are going to do breakouts, not breakout sessions, but David's going to stop and we're going to open up for questions throughout his presentation, just because he's going to cover a lot of stuff in a short period of time. And if there are hot burning questions that you were all wanting to ask, we won't wait just till the very end to do that. So we will be stopping periodically throughout at David's discretion. So please be sending questions, care of the chat box throughout as they pop into your head, and I'll be facilitating that with David as we go through the session. We will do a final Q&A as well. And then the end of the event in an hour and a half from now. As mentioned, questions through the chat, please. You can either send those to everybody or just send them to myself, Robert Menzies, directly. And we are in fact recording the session as we always do, and you'll be getting an email link of the session to everyone that's on the call today for going back and maybe reviewing some things that you may have missed in detail. And then also, as a special added bonus, David agreed to send everyone a document which were additional trends that didn't make it into the list of 7. So I believe there was 5 in there. So that document will be sent out as well to participants as an added bonus for all of you. All right, so I think David is pretty well known within Canadian agri-marketing, but just a quick overview of who he is. So he's partner and chief growth officer of ThinkShift, a national agri-marketing ad agency located in Winnipeg. He was also our 2018 Agri-Marketer of the Year, and he is a Cambassador. And if you're not familiar with Cambassador, go to the website and learn about what the Cambassador program is. Basically, David's on call for any of you who have questions about career, about projects that they're working on. He will work with you on some of those projects in terms of giving some guidance. And then to learn more about the Cambassador program, we have a video for you to watch. So enjoy.
Please join me in welcoming David to the stage today.
When I first started my career, I was an ad agency guy who just happened to work in ag. I fell in love with advertising, the perfect mixture of creative and strategy, and the thought that I could be in business and have fun at the same time. In my first year, I was assigned the Cargill account. I remember thinking, this isn't going to be very exciting, but was immediately awestruck by the breadth, depth, and complexities of their business. Fast forward 20 years, and I've now had the honor of working with some of the best people, brands, and businesses in ag. Falling in love over and over again with an industry that literally stewards the well-being of the world. At the same time, I've always felt like I represent a hidden corner within the industry. A corner comprised of businesses and people who serve agriculture, but may not be considered in ag. A corner filled with ad agencies, PR firms, and marketing and communications companies that are not commonly associated with agriculture, but should be. Fortunately, I've been able to make a home within this unique space, and now feel like an ag guy who just happens to work at an ad agency. Now, as a Cambassador, I feel a sense of responsibility to help others do the same.
Very good. Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you for the kind words. Thank you to CAMA for allowing me this opportunity. CAMA holds a spot very near and dear in my heart. I always say that CAMA was really my first introduction into this interesting world of agri-marketing, and it was really my connection point to the many great people and organizations and brands that live in this space, and so I am extremely pleased to help out and to serve CAMA in whatever capacity I can, and especially like doing events like this one today. We had a little brief conversation going before we started today, where Rob had mentioned, that this needing to take the time every now and then to reflect on what is coming, what the future is going to look like. The tyranny of the urgent does keep us focused on the here and now, most days of our lives. And so I think it is important that as agri-marketers and as professionals in this industry that we give ourselves time to look at what is coming and to prepare for it, to leverage it, to see it as an opportunity and not a challenge. And that's what I hope to do today. I hope to give you some of these reflections that I have had over the last year. As Robert Menzies has mentioned, this is the second annual piece that I've put together, looked at 7 trends. And these 7 trends, they are not in any order specifically. I've tried to capture trends that I believe apply to many different elements of agriculture and agri-marketing, from macro trends to a bit more micro kind of applicational trends, to trends that are, for nonprofit to for-profit industries. So again, I hope that you find things in here that maybe pique your interest, that pique your curiosity, and hopefully inspire you to think about the way you're doing business and the opportunities in front of you. As a brief prologue, how this piece was created. Now that I've done this for a couple of years in a row, I've tried to develop a bit of a process for doing this, and started to look at kind of the primary sources of inspiration. Where do these trends come from? Where am I looking for these trends? And there's a couple of primary areas. I tend to look at trends outside of ag that are significantly relevant to the industry. So things that are taking place, maybe not in our industry, that are taking place in other industries around the world that I believe are going to have a bearing. So really things that we could learn and adopt from elsewhere. Things that best practices that other industries have adopted, but agriculture and agri-marketing maybe hasn't yet. I also try to look for trends that are emerging in ag. So things that are starting to show signs of taking off, of starting to show signs of life or real progression in agriculture. One of these trends I believe right now for sure is the emergence of e-commerce in agriculture. This last year, we've seen greater movement in that area than ever before. And so again, that would fall into this area. And these are really changes taking place in ag that should be considered and prepared for. These are things that I believe are really inevitable, that are things that are going to change our worlds no matter what. I also tried to look at trends that weren't COVID specific, especially in this strange year and a half we've been through. I didn't want to look at trends that were going to come and go with COVID. I wanted to look at trends that I believed are going to have a lasting effect and that were going to be a part of our lives well after COVID is. And so again, trends that are likely to evolve and grow over the next number of years. And so that was really kind of trying to key in on those. As I said, these aren't in any order. I'm going to go through the 7. As Robert mentioned, I'm going to pause after every couple of trends, and I will be kind of checking and keeping an eye on the notes and the chat to see if there's any questions in that. So I'll pause after every couple and maybe field a couple questions, and then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. I think one of the other things that we will be providing, so to one lucky participant, is we have produced a persona, so farmer persona report with 6 farmer personas that we have produced with based on a accumulation of data that we have acquired over the years. And we will be providing that to one of the lucky participants. So we'll be doing a draw after this and selecting that winner. So stay tuned to that. The first trend that I want to talk about is using culture to unite a divided workforce. And this is a very interesting one, and one that I do think applies to every business in the world, not just in agriculture, but I think it's something that we absolutely need to pay attention to and be very almost hyper aware of. And it's really, if I look at the situation analysis, so kind of what drove my thinking and what really kind of caused this trend to percolate to the surface was this, a world divided stands apart. And there were some really interesting things taking place this last year and a half. I think that COVID did a couple of very interesting things. It shed light on how connected the world has become physically. We are more of a global economy, global world, global population than we've ever been. There is such a connectedness across geographies, across the world now. At the same time, though, other major world events shed light on how divided the world still is, psychologically and in our minds and in our beliefs. There are major differences amongst the population and amongst our workforce, the people that we want to hire and will need to hire, as it pertains to political partisanship, as it pertains to even pandemic safety protocols. We saw this, as it relates to social justice, as it relates to racial inequalities. And in many of these, and we saw this especially south of the border in the United States, that many of these differences align with the rural or urban divide, and that you tend to find very different viewpoints on some very major issues, very major topics, based on whether you are rural or urban in nature. The interesting part of this and what this means to ag companies is that we will continue to be challenged with blending rural and urban workforces. This is going to be, this has been a challenge that we have had for years, and it's going to continue to be a challenge. And I'll actually get into that and why that challenge is going to even be more so as kind of the rural population continues to decline, and in some ways agriculture is becoming more urban. And so really, what does ag do, and how can agricultural organizations prepare? What can we do to overcome these differences? How can we navigate these divided waters? And really, for businesses, in my belief, intentional corporate culture is that way. It is that tool that we can use to unite workforces, to unite our people, to create less divide. I think that this is nothing new, but the belief of aligning employees around shared beliefs, I believe, is going to be more important going forward than it has been in the past. I think people have just really realized how deep-seated some of their beliefs are, and how important they are. I think that what we have seen, it more so than ever in 2020 almost, is that people will go to great lengths to preserve, protect, and foster deeply held beliefs. They will live and die by their beliefs. They are highly motivated by their beliefs. What intentional corporate cultures do is it's a means to define shared organizational beliefs. It's a means of defining the beliefs that an organization stands for, as a means of finding those who also believe in them. And really, again, some of the common ones in this are the vision, the mission, the purpose, and the values that the organization holds, that the organization holds dear. And really, that by having these really clearly defined and true beliefs, that they could use, these organizations can use these beliefs to attract, align, and rally others around. They can find others who are aligned to those beliefs, who have those same beliefs, and will again go to great lengths to support them. Interestingly enough, and this is something where we've done some work in culture, and I look at it like brand, that these beliefs in an organization's culture it has to be relevant. It can't be just anything. It has to be relevant. It has to be meaningful to the employees. You can't have beliefs that are meaningless. It has to be authentic. It has to be true to the organization. And what I mean by this is, you can't preach beliefs that you don't follow. I always love the United Airlines example of, fly the friendly skies, was a belief that they preached that they had, when it absolutely wasn't the case. They were maybe one of the unfriendliest airlines. And it has to be different. it can't be generic or so common that it doesn't differentiate. Otherwise, you're going to be trying to still appeal to all the masses, and you're still going to have a major divide. You know, we're now at a point where I believe that ag organizations can't afford to stand for nothing. That they can't have no shared culture. That it's no longer enough. We can't exist without a strongly defined shared culture. Nor can we as ag organizations afford to stand for everything. We can't be these, you know, jack of all trades, master of none. We can't try to appeal to everybody. Like I said, if we do, then we're going to be bringing everyone in, and we're going to have conflict. We will have people, and we'll have, you know, beliefs that don't intermix. And I also believe that it isn't enough for ag organizations individually to wave the feeding the world flag anymore, which I think a lot have used as kind of their cultural belief. And it's not that this isn't important, but it's not differentiated. I believe that almost every organization in agriculture has some form of belief and has some form of stewardship responsibility to this. And so therefore it's not differentiated. It doesn't allow for that important piece of what makes you different than the other ag organization. You know, we're now at this point, and we see this in other industries where agribusinesses must be brave and boldly claim who they're for and why they matter, even knowing that this means that they won't be able to appeal to everyone. And I think that's always the scariest part of a brand, as well as and in the same case culture, is the fact that you won't appeal to everybody. But from a cultural standpoint, that is absolutely critical. There is a major benefit to self-selection, to standing, knowing what you stand for, and attracting people who stand for the same thing. What we see is that intentional corporate cultures, they attract the type of talent that fits and flourishes within the belief system. It also repels those that have a hard time adapting or accepting the culture, adapting to or accepting the culture. It becomes self-selective, that people who don't fit know they don't fit, and they self-select out. And ultimately, this is not a bad thing, as most organizations, and this isn't just ag, exhaust significant amounts of time, effort, and investment trying to fit square pegs into round holes, trying to force fit when it's not there. And again, it is much better to have the people understand when they aren't a fit and select out than to try to force fit and it never be the case. We've studied intentional corporate cultures for years, and there are some significant benefits that we have seen from organizations that have very strong corporate cultures, that they tend to attract the top 20% of talent, that the highest talent, the top talent, they're not going to work for an organization that doesn't have a shared set of beliefs. They need a larger purpose. They want a larger purpose. They want that alignment, and they will not accept beyond that. We've seen that these organizations have 41% less absenteeism. Again, people will go to great lengths to support what they do. They will work hard. They will give that extra effort. 70% fewer safety incidents. This is very interesting. This is a very interesting statistic for ag organizations, where a great number of the companies that exist in ag, you know, have to have safety as a number one value. They have 59% less turnover, which I'll talk to another trend that comes up about kind of the changing workforce. And you know, the less turnover that we have, the better. You know, it's going to be very difficult trying to compete for talent in the coming years. 10% higher customer metrics. So happier employees, more aligned employees create happier customers, more aligned customers. 17% higher productivity. and 21% higher profitability. You know, so if we look at like kind of a general synopsis of this trend, is that as the world continues to experience this significant divisiveness, you know, ag organizations must turn to and leverage intentional corporate cultures to unite and inspire their workforces. I think that this is going to become a table stake for many organizations, and not just, you know, with what we've seen with many organizations, not just some words on a wall somewhere, but something that is truly intentional and that is used to rally, inspire, and align people. The second trend, you know, we move from the world of culture, which is very closely related to brand, but to the world of brand. And this is one that that was really inspired for me by some things taking place in the automotive industry. I'm a car buff. I've always loved following the automotive industry. I've always loved watching how they market, how they brand, how they use strategy, all these things. And there's been some very interesting occurrences and some very interesting trends that I think that this is one of the ones that I think we can borrow from, that agriculture can steal some of these interesting best practices. You know, having worked with organizations in agriculture for over 20 years now, you know, I've seen that, like, in branding, more does not equal better. That more brands does not necessarily equal better. And unfortunately, in agriculture, I feel like we struggle with too many brands. To put it bluntly, I think we create brands too quickly and too frequently without thinking through the ramifications and the amount of investment required. And so again, I think that what is the basis for this, that is, agriculture is long suffered from a lack of brand strategy. Not branding, but brand strategy. And what I mean by brand strategy is the building of equity over time in the brands and organization stewards. So it's not just creating a brand or determining what a brand stands for. It's now you've got a brand or you've got many brands. How are you managing those brands? How are you leveraging those brands? How are you growing those brands? How are you using them and stewarding those brands? I think because of this, many ag brands have built less equity and have essentially left value in dollars on the table. Because we haven't stewarded the brands that we have in our portfolios as best as we could, we've left equity. And equity, we know this in marketing, equates to value in dollars. You know, the more valuable a brand is seen, the more a customer will be inclined to pay for it. So one of the outcomes of this, as I mentioned, was that ag tends to create or introduce new brands as a means of extending their offerings. There tends to be this immediate go-to that we've got a new offering, a new product, or new extension, or new whatever it is. We need a new brand. We need a new brand. And I think, again, like I said, that there is this, maybe we don't pay attention to the fact that new brands require major investments of time, effort, and dollars to develop and grow. Much more than existing brands. Much more than existing brands. Again, you got to think of a new brand as worth nothing when it first comes to market. It needs to go through all the stages of awareness generation, of recall, of association to the brand, positioning, all these things, whereas existing brands don't. And that comes at a major expense. And so when we're investing in new brands, that's time and investment that we're not putting into existing brands. So there is this double imperative where new brands can actually jeopardize the equity of existing brands. And that's something we have to be very, very understanding and cognizant of. But what I'm going to share with you is that there are some very interesting brand strategies to better manage this expansion in ag's offerings. And the one that I want to speak to is brand extension strategy. This is It's not a new strategy, but it's being used in very interesting ways in other industries. And I think it could be used in very interesting ways and beneficial ways in agriculture as well. This strategy is known by a couple other references. So it's also known as brand expansion. It's also known as brand stretching, or even spin-off strategy. These are some other kind of terms that you may have heard used and associated with this. At its core, brand extension strategy is the concept of leveraging an existing brand to penetrate a new market. It is, let's not create a new brand, let's extend an existing brand. The benefits of this is that it enhances brand image by growing and expanding the existing brand. It allows the brand to stand for something more, or to encapsulate more, to become larger. It reduces the risk of perceived by the customer by leveraging the brand that they trust. So while there is still risk, there's absolutely risk associated with this, it does reduce risk of customer perception. So they know the brand, they trust the brand. You're not trying to introduce a new brand that they have no trust, no understanding of. It improves the likelihood of gaining distribution and trial. In this case, so again, we're extending a brand, so we're looking to extend our shelf space versus, can we get new shelf space? Can we introduce a new brand? Will you carry this new product versus will you carry this new extension of this existing brand or extension of this existing product? It provides promotional economies of scale. So this is a very important one. It becomes an efficiency play as well. That marketing for the core brand and its extensions, they reinforce each other. So when you're talking about what the products were under the core brand and the extension of that brand, it increases the overall awareness, and so they reinforce each other. It develops the cost of developing a brand, as I mentioned, which can be significant, not just the creation of the brand, the positioning, the launching, all those things. And the interesting part is it allows for repositioning opportunities for existing brands. And this is where I think it could be very interesting within agriculture, that allows us to, for lack of a better term, dust off some brands that may not have the greatest equity, but reutilize them for their awareness and reposition them in a more favorable light. There's a couple of examples. The second is probably the best example of this, but there's a couple of examples, again, like I said, from the automotive industry that I want to share with you that I think really kind of showcase this in action. You know, the first example is the Ford Mustang. And really they've just gone through a significant brand extension, and from all the reading I've done, this is just the beginning of the extension that they're undergoing. And really this idea that they are moving the Mustang brand from being really a muscle car to a performance lifestyle, that they are going to reposition it and extend that brand. I think, you know, right now Mustang is synonymous with the muscle car industry. It was the first muscle car, and so it's not only associated with the muscle car industry, it's associated with all the pros and cons of that. And there are definitely pros. It's got that exhilarating performance. It's got that slice of Americana. It's got that, you know, it's a status symbol. It showcases, you know, a part of your personal expression. But it has its cons. The muscle car industry and Mustang itself has its cons. It has these associative, you know, elements that are stuck to it, like poor fuel economy. That big engines equal big emissions. That it's not environmentally friendly, and then it doesn't fit a family lifestyle. That when you think of Mustang, you don't think of family. You know, this is actually like the personification of the muscle car. This is a unicorn Mustang, so a fully tricked out Mustang, but just kind of what the muscle car idea, if you were to personify it in your mind, is just big engine, big horsepower, big performance, 2 seats, no family, all performance, all lifestyle. That's it. What Mustang did, or what Ford did, was say, listen, I think we can take those pros associated with the Mustang, this performance idea, this exhilaration, and we can extend it. And just this year, they introduced the Mustang Mach-E. Ford's first full electric, like from the ground up produced electric vehicle, developed and launched under the Mustang name. Again, by doing so, by introducing such a different vehicle under the Mustang name, they have completely shifted what Mustang stands for. They've also opened up the door for them to introduce an electric Mustang, to move some of that Mustang away from the poor fuel efficiency claims, from that it's got to be big horsepower, big output engines, and big emissions, that it can now be known as exhilarating performance that supports a friendlier lifestyle as well. It also shows that a Mustang can be family friendly, in its own way. Again, very interesting way of leveraging that existing brand to expand the offering, but also to reposition it. The second example of this is the GMC Hummer. Very similar, but probably in this case a situation where the existing brand carried more negative baggage than maybe the Mustang did. Really, like the previous Hummer, was really that Army SUV turned to real life vehicle. And what they're looking at now is turning this into kind of an ecological ATV, that they're looking at using this as their new ecological vehicle. And again, so when you think of the Hummer, it was synonymous with the SUV industry and all its pros and cons. It was big and bold. It was go anywhere performance. It was a status symbol too. It was that, again, bigger is better. It was, manly, machismo, all these things. But it had these major cons. It was terrible gas mileage and emissions. It was a symbol of excess and almost a flippancy to the environment, an unfriendliness, that we don't care about the environment. It had horrible ride and comfort, all of these things. I still remember when Arnold Schwarzenegger drove the first Hummer, the Hummer that was actually the Army Hummer, and drove it out. I think it was at a movie premiere, and then GMC saw that there was such interest in it that they turned it into a consumer vehicle. Again, just kind of this personification of all these things, good and bad. So again, what GMC is said, listen, we can take that Hummer brand that has equity in it, we can leverage the positive, and by repositioning it, and again, in this case, going all electric with this vehicle, all electric, we can kind of recapture a market. We can reposition it and leverage that brand, not try to introduce a brand new one. So again, at the end of the day, to build greater equity in the brands that we all steward, that we should consider this strategy, the strategy of brand extension, when introducing new products or services and entering new markets. I think it's really important that we don't always fall into the trap of new equals better, or let's go to new brand. Before I get into the next trend here, maybe I'll just see, was there any questions so far? Anything that anyone had?
I've got a couple for you, David.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as promised and threatened at the beginning, David has a lot to unpack in these. So I wanted to just go back to the first one, which was the culture, which typically is a topic that agri-marketers aren't usually, or even marketers aren't usually super involved with. Marketers don't usually get into the director of HR's office very often, unless it's for a career, unless it's for attraction of new talent to the organization. So I've got two questions. You can answer whichever one you want, David.
Yeah.
So the first one is, in saying that, how should marketers be involved as it relates to culture? And if you don't want to answer that one, my second question is, we're in a commoditization industry for the most part. Differentiation is what we talk about all the time. And so is there a role for marketing as it relates to, let's just say, sales, where marketers should be leveraging what's happening culture-wise and bringing that outwardly for a sales strategy?
So I'll address the second one first. I think that absolutely. I think that culture can be a strong marketing tool. I think that there's a number of brands that have leveraged their culture. I think of another airline, Southwest Airlines, that really their culture became their brand. That they were they were really the friendly airline. They were that friendly, kind of bubbly, feel good airline. And that was very much based on their culture. They leveraged that. They used that as being kind of in some ways, kind of the anti-airline, the one that wasn't going to feel like it was, pulling teeth. The first question, it is absolutely a common question we get is, culture is generally left to HR and senior leaders. And so what can I do as a marketer, and why should I be doing something about it, or how can I do something about it? We like to take the belief that like brand and culture are flip sides of the same coin. That really, culture is the extension of your differentiation, your beliefs internally. Brand is the reflection of that externally. And really that ultimately your brand can only be as strong as your culture, and that your culture drives the actions of your people. And that if your people aren't acting and behaving and doing the things that your company needs to be doing, your brand is going to be fragmented. It's going to be based on kind of false promises. I think an area where we are seeing this crossover live a lot, and I think it's growing, I'm going to get into it later, is customer experience. The rise of customer experience. That customer experience, all those touch points that a customer has with your organization, and how critical each of them, how they all play a role in defining the experience that customer has, good, bad, and different, is critical. And that marketers are in many ways being kind of left to oversee that world of customer experience. And I think that is where a marketer then gets to say, okay, our culture is not, it's not driving the right behaviors with our people. It's not bringing in the right people. It is not doing the right things. And it is therefore creating a less than stellar customer experience. And if I'm going to be associated with growing our brand and growing our customer experience, then I need to have a role in helping to shape our culture and helping to steward our culture.
Great. Regarding trend number 2, leveraging equity-rich brands, I'm curious, what areas of agriculture are the worst offenders for creating new brands?
Oh, there's a lot. I could probably say the area that is probably the isn't a big offender is, it does seem like the large equipment manufacturers, so the John Deeres and the Case, and that they generally introduce kind of extensions of product lines, but everything tends to fall under a certain brand. Now that is very much a branded house approach that they take. I do think, like in the world of ag chem, crop protection, there is a lot of brands out there. There are so many, and so many that just don't have the investment and support to see the true value that they could have.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. So trend number 3, gaining traction in consumer distraction. And I apologize for the play on words here for the situation analysis, but this was what one of our my copywriters came up with, was the tale of two shitties. And I think it will make sense to you. So really what I saw, and this kind of starts, it goes back to November 2019. I think all of us, again, we're all in agriculture, we're all agri-marketers. I think it comes as no surprise that ag was struggling. It was not a great time in November of 2019, in late 2019. We were coming off a year with some majorly like poor crop conditions in significant geographies. We had commodity prices that were at 10-year lows for many of the key crops. And one of the biggest issues we were facing was that consumer trust in commercial agriculture was waning. It was almost an all-time low due to perceptions of unhealthy product and production practices, animal mistreatment, poor land stewardship practices, you name it. It was like ag was in the doghouse. Actually, I had that in my previous evolution of ag piece, that ag was in the doghouse. And how do we work? How do we exist in the doghouse? At the same time, I remember NAMA, so the North American Agri-Marketing Association, they had a survey of agri-marketers. It was 500 to 1,000 agri-marketers, and this was the worst survey results I ever received. But 60% of ag organizations were reducing marketing spend, and that up to 80% of these ag organizations were reallocating marketing dollars. So just not a good sign. I will always remember, so Jenny Pickett, who was the CEO of NAMA, she coined the term, like, in ag, flat is the new up. That if you could hold ground, that you were doing good. And so again, it was just this terrible time. Fast forward to November 2020. And this is where maybe that second shitty comes in, was the world, kind of not ag, but the world is undergoing the second wave of the pandemic. The reality is setting in that COVID-19 ain't going anywhere. It was going to be prominent throughout 2021. At that time, we had cases and deaths reaching 9.3 million, 250,000 in the US. US election results, it was that major political and civil unrest in the US. And the reality kind of set in at that time too, like even globally, that the next president and that the political scene wasn't going to be sorted out anytime soon. So really, I remember November, it was just kind of a kick to the gut. You kind of came off of a nice summer, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, we're in for more of this. Interestingly though, as it relates to ag, things were looking good. We had strong crop conditions in major geographies. We had commodity prices that were starting to go in the right direction. We're increasing for key crops. And one of the most interesting pieces, we saw consumer trust in agriculture increase for the first time in years. So what happened? I believe this all has to do with kind of media and consumer attention. And how it exists. It's I like to look at it as both fickle and habitual. It's fickle in that it can change frequently based on what's perceived to be most important. There's a reason why it's 15 minutes of fame is a term, because people are only interested for so long. But it could be very habitual, that it can get stuck on certain subjects as long as there's still interest in them. That we can get really hyper focused on something for a long period of time. If the consumers seem to be interested in it, the media is going to cover it. One of the things that we see is that once the media and consumer attention is stuck on a subject, though, it can be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to shift it elsewhere. And that this attention shifting, even more important, that this attention shifting events and subjects are typically not fabricated, that we can't as marketers or as PR specialists or as communicators, when it's stuck on such a big subject, we can't shift the attention. We can't do something to shift the attention. And we need something bigger to occur, basically, outside of our control to shift the attention. I hate using this example, but it is such a great kind of past example of this. In the late 90s, going into the turn of the century, high school shootings, gun control was the sticky subject. This is, a couple of unfortunate photos from Columbine High School. Columbine, the mass shootings that were happening at high schools across the United States, even in Canada, were really focusing the general population on gun control, on safety of our children, on this has gone too far. And basically overnight, that focus stopped. And what happened? 9/11 happened. 9/11 came, and it was such an immense event that it shifted the attention. It was that attention breaker. Oddly enough, shootings, gun control, all those things continue at the same levels as before 9/11. There's been just as many shootings, just as many students killed in shootings after 9/11 as there were before. But the attention got shifted. It was a major event that shifted the attention. So if we look at this past year, what has happened? In 2020, COVID, political unrest, civil and human rights, and other major events subjects broke the existing news cycle. What was even more important in this is that the weight and the magnitude of these new news items were so significant that they reset consumer perceptions on what is and isn't important. I love to put it this way, that for the average consumer, deciding between the paleo and the Whole30 diets became of significantly less concern than the overall well-being of one's own health, family, and country. And again, so this created a shift from concerns of privilege, white people problems, to concerns of consequence. In this mix, what ended up happening was consumers learned to appreciate the role that agriculture played in maintaining food security and safety during the pandemic. This is one of those reasons why, I think it was two reasons why the trust levels went up. They were no longer being as hyper focused on the issues of ag, and they were open finally to start seeing the benefits of ag. And they realized that they never once had to question whether there was going to be food to feed their children, to feed their families. And they saw the benefits of this large kind of commercial agricultural machine. This information is based on Google Trends, and it is a snapshot from, again, November to December 2019. And you can see like search trends and everything here. These are in the thousands of like terms such as veganism, organic, plant-based diet, and family health. You can't even see that the line doesn't even trend on here. But all these other ones, you see them trending. You fast forward a year, family health is the only one that trends. All the other ones have basically disappeared. That people were just, it became of significantly less importance. What this means to us as an industry is that we can build on this basis of trust. I think it's a significantly opportune time for us. I think to do so, we have to understand kind of the nature of trust and how trust works. That I believe trust exists on a continuum. That when negative trust exists or mistrust, that communications will be regarded with skepticism and possible defiance. If I don't trust you, I'm not going to believe what you say, and I may actually fight it. I'm going to be against it. When neutral or no trust exists, that communications will be regarded with apathy and possible disregard. That if I don't know you, it's not that I'm going to not believe you. I just may not really care to pay attention to what you're saying. You're a stranger to me, so why should it matter? But when positive trust exists, communications will be regarded with sincerity, at face value, and as genuine. There'll be a level of belief. So again, when we look at this trust, it's good to think of trust also as a bank account where only the account holder can make deposits. So if you think of a relationship with a partner or spouse, that only your partner or spouse can determine if they trust you. You can't force someone to trust you, but you can force someone to mistrust you. You can make a withdrawal from that account. Both parties can make a withdrawal. Fortunately, though, that once the balance of trust is substantial enough, it will take a significant withdrawal or breach of trust to go back to zero or to a negative state. So for agriculture, again, I think that we have this opportunity to use the trust that agriculture has established in this last year as an opportunity to start more positive, meaningful discourse. We're not at a level of negative trust. We're probably just right of neutral. Ask consumers about the subjects and concerns that they are and will be most pressing to them going forward. Let's figure out what they want to talk about and let's talk to them about that. Let's approach consumers on their terms, when, where, and how they want to engage. Let's not force ourselves upon them. Let's figure out how those best ways to engage are. Some of the things we shouldn't do, those don'ts. Let's not stop prioritizing consumer outreach and education simply because we're in a better place. Let's not rest on our laurels and say, okay, everything's good. We're through the worst of it and everything's going to be smooth sailing from here on out. No, I think we've got opportunity, but it's all on us to continue to grow. Let's not go back to the same subjects from before the pandemic. Let's not bring up the past if it's no longer of interest. I think this is the important part. Let's figure out with the consumers what they want to talk about, what's important to them. Let's not automatically default to what was pressing before. And let's not assume that increased trust equals an immediate desire for dialogue. Again, I think we're not too far from that neutral trust kind of apathy where I don't believe that everyone is so absolutely, wanting and craving a discord with agriculture yet. But I think we can continue to kind of get there. So again, kind of the main takeaway here is that with COVID and the U.S. elections, they shifted the consumer media attention away from really this hyper focus on agriculture and food production. And when I think what that's done is it's provided an ideal opportunity for ag organizations to re-engage these audiences in open, honest, and meaningful dialogue. The next one, and this is, I was referring to this trend a little bit when I was talking about culture. This is, shaping the agribusinesses of tomorrow. I think that we are seeing a changing workforce and a new normal. And I hate using the term a new normal because it's been so overused, but I do think we are seeing this, that things, there is not going to be a going back to what was completely to what was before COVID. That said, that there's these trends taking place in the workforce that agriculture has to be very aware of, that baby boomers will continue to exit the ag workforce. We know this. And in agriculture, we are an older bunch. We tend to trend older, not just on farm, which was the case for many years, but also in the organizations that serve the farm. So we're going to see some mass exodus continue here. We're going to continue to see that large entrance of millennials and Gen Y will continue to grow and make up, and they will reach the majority of the workforce. They absolutely will if they're not there already. And I think in this is, and I mentioned this last time, that this Gen X kind of, cohort is good. They're going to feel that pinch, the management pinch. They're going to have to make up for the exit of the boomers, and they're going to have to manage the millennials and Gen Y, and they're going to have this major pinch on them. And Gen X is, we're a smaller bunch than some of these other cohorts. So it'll be very interesting. As I mentioned before, the ag workforce will continue to become less ag. There's going to be fewer people with rural and farming roots. We know this. It's part of just the overall population change. At the same time, there's this new normal that is taking place. That COVID has made, and we know this, well, what's happening today, that has made digital and virtual communications a norm. It's no longer can we do it, it's just we just do it. That COVID has shed light on and enhanced our ability to work remote. That working remote, again, which seemed like, much less commonplace and had so many questions about it, is now saying, no, we can absolutely do it. It is not difficult to work remote. And like I mentioned, well, I think we're going to see this pendulum swing back from the extremes that we saw in COVID, where everyone was at home. We're never going to go back to what was. It's just not going to. And I think this statistic speaks very loudly to that. That Stats Canada just in April did an analysis, and they found that 80% of the workforce would now prefer flexible work arrangements. And what they mean by flexible is a mix. They want a bit of both. They want some time in office, they want some time at home. But they want to ultimately be able to have the flexibility to choose. So really, shaping agribusinesses, that for us as agriculture and ag businesses, we have to embrace this change if we're going to remain competitive. Especially if we see that we're going to be fighting for this non-rural audience that everyone's fighting for, and anyone can fight for because it's a distributed workforce. We got to be very competitive in the labor pool. So again, in order to compete against non-ag industries, they're also vying for their unfair of the top talent. Ag must embrace distributed labor. And I think the other one is the digital discipline. This is going to be a significant one, and it plays in significantly to not just the distributed workforce and the work from home, but just our overall state of being. First, I want to get into the embracing the distributed labor. And like I said, this is really moving from a state of on-site to on their terms. What we saw, and again, I'm not saying that we have seen it all, but we work with a number of ag and non-ag companies. What we saw when COVID hit, and when this kind of this forced movement to work from home happened, we saw that ag was more disrupted by the initial shift to work from home, and generally lacked the proper infrastructure and tools to support the employees. That ag had definitely more of a traditional butts and seats approach. You're in the office, you work from the office. We're also seeing on the flip side that there seems to be a much quicker embrace and even enforcement of return to work policies. That I've talked to a number of ag companies that really desperately want their employees to come back, to almost force them to come back, which I think is a very dangerous place to be. The interesting part of this is that I find interesting is that this is all in spite of the fact that agriculture and agriculture organizations have long embraced distributed labor for positions like field level sales, agronomy, consultation, and more. There's so many ag organizations already have distributed labor, people working in distributed labor. So it was interesting that they embraced it in one area, but they really didn't in so many others. And I understand that in agriculture, while there's some positions that absolutely will require on-site resources for manufacturing and grain origination and distribution, the vast majority don't. From sales and marketing to customer service and support to IT management to accounting and finance, human resource, admin, all of these positions don't need to be in office all the time. We've seen, and there's been so much research done this last year on the benefits of this, that really a distributed workforce, it drives employee productivity. Employees work whenever and however they work best. They retains knowledge and investment because employees can move and not have to leave the company. It ensures diversity. Employees can be sourced from anywhere. It attracts more talent. Employees aren't limited by locale or geography. And it also allows improved focus and fewer distractions. Now, again, this is an interesting one because this falls on the employee to ensure this, but it is, I've met a number of people who found kind of their groove trying to working in a flexible environment. The second part of this trend, again, was embracing the digital discipline. So leveraging digital to drive business success, I think, is another significant one that really was driven by this COVID shift to digital. That what we've seen, and this is another really interesting one, if I look at my agricultural client contacts, and the roles and titles they have, I see a lot of marketing managers, directors of marketing, communications managers, marketing coordinators, VP sales and marketing, even CMOs. If I look at some of my non-ag clients, their roles and titles tend to be very different. There's a lot of digital marketing managers, directors of e-commerce, content managers, digital and web coordinators, VPs of customer experience and customer experience officers. There's this much larger embrace of digital, and has been for years in industries outside of ag. And I think that we're going to see this rapid progression into digital and some of these disciplines in agriculture. If we look at, actually, this information comes from LinkedIn, that the fastest growing positions in 2020, 2021, and this is non-healthcare related or education related, was user experience and customer experience managers, grew by 20%. Digital marketing managers and directors, 33%. Data science specialists and data engineers, 46%. Digital content writers, 49%. Frontline e-commerce coordinators, 73%. The digital boom is taking place again in so many industries, and ag is not going to be immune to it. I think that, on top of this is with all these new digital products, platforms, and touch points, we become an increasingly significant part of the agribusinesses. And we saw this, a lot of ag companies having to invest in digital this last year. Possessing a strong digital team is going to be a must. I think that as these major digital roles require significant formal training and years of experience, one of the things we're going to see is that ag organizations that used to take the approach of let's fire someone who's got agriculture knowledge and train them up in digital, they may find that may not be the best way to do it. We need someone with significant depth and breadth of experience in digital first, and maybe we have to train them in ag second. Ultimately, I think this is going to come down to some pretty tough decisions, because investment's not going to increase. There's not going to be more roles that we can just hire for. It's just going to be, do we have a CMO versus a CXO, a chief marketing officer versus a chief experience officer? Do we have a director of marketing versus a sales enablement director? Do we have a marketing coordinator versus a content or web coordinator? There'll be, again, we're going to face this increased competition for these positions. And so we're going to have to be hyper competitive and really embrace some of these things. One last note on this one, because I think it's so important, is that, as we embrace these new disciplines, these new these important disciplines of digital, and start to build out these new teams, I think it's really important that we have it with collaboration baked in, that we don't fall into the traps that maybe other industries fell into before us. We could learn from them and avoid their mistakes. Instead of having the traditional marketing team, sales team, and digital team, we could have the business development team, which is really the marketing and the sales team. That's that great overlap. We could have the digital marketing and content team, which is really the blend of the marketing team and the digital team. The sales support and service team, which is where digital and sales overlap. And even where all three of them overlap is really this customer experience team, where all of them are focused on the customer experience. So again, at the end of the day, that we're going to be increasingly forced to compete with industries for the best talent available, and basing distributed labor models and elevating our focus on discipline on digital is going to be absolutely required. It's going to be a big part of what we do. Robert, I'm going to go through one more trend, and then we can take a couple questions, then we'll do the last two, just to make sure that we end on time.
Thanks.
So this fifth trend, just growing size of wallet versus share of wallet, is an interesting one, and it does speak to the overall marketing approach and the strategies that we take. At the end of the day, I think that this is kind of based on the belief that a rising tide lifts all boats. And what do I mean by that? That really for a long time now, for decades really, that the primary focus of marketing and agribusinesses has been to capture market share. And this is primarily for-profit organizations, but to earn a bigger piece of the farm production expenditures pie, to get a greater share of what is available. And that this has led to businesses and marketing strategies and efforts and tactics that grow share of wallet. So to get a bigger piece of the pie, I need to not only sell more of this product, but I need to sell more products into this area versus size of wallet. So the idea of earning more dollars from existing spend versus increasing spend. You could really see this in some of the macro trends that took place in agriculture. You know, some of the major consolidations of the largest agribusinesses, that really the largest agribusinesses now basically have stakes in all major crop inputs, from seed to chem to nutrition. That they also have, you know, stakes in farm production services like data management, grain marketing, crop consultation, all these things. This one-stop shop approach. This has also led to, like we've seen this even at the ag retail side, acquiring their own product lines and are white labeling those of manufacturers. They're not just retail, but they're manufacturer. Again, all with the desire to get a greater share of that pie. And it's not a bad thing, because again, they're altogether, because this approach does have significant benefits. It mitigates risk. It absolutely does. We're spreading profitability, financial risk, and business success across many offerings allows businesses to better weather downturns. So if one product's down, another one may be up. That's a good thing. It can improve profitability. We see this a lot through bundling in our business. You know, that by bundling offers, we can improve profitability by, you know, using lesser margin offerings or higher margin offerings to offset lesser margin offerings. It can help with customer retention. So again, instead of losing a customer because they have to buy another product or another element elsewhere, they can stay within the family. Again, that one-stop shop. It provides increased competitiveness. Again, by having something in multiple categories, we have more of a well-rounded offering, and we don't have to risk people leaving to go get something else. And there's that ease of expansion. And, you know, as I mentioned earlier with the brand piece, extending it or leveraging brands, we could use existing brands. We could leverage our existing brand to enter into new markets. But it does have its major drawbacks too. And this is one of the things. The major downside of this approach can be seen when the customer's wallet remains relatively fixed or even decreases. So when the customer has less to spend, they're going to spend less. And so when costs of land and fuel and human capital increase, which are all trends in agriculture, farms look to control their spending elsewhere. And they're going to look at those other spends that they have. In addition, like when commodity prices decrease, we always see this, that the farmer's wallet shrinks accordingly, again, causing a constriction of the amount that they can spend. So the wallet itself decreases. You know, I believe that one of the issues we've seen in kind of that micronutrient and biologicals market has been this, you know, some of the conditions we've been through where we had low commodity prices, we didn't have that additional spend, that because this was a non-essential, that unless they had a larger wallet, unless they had more to spend, they weren't going to spend on it. So again, these, you know, I think one of the things is that these factors are all outside the control or the realm of control of agribusinesses. Like we can't change commodity prices. We can't affect some of these major pieces, the cost of land, you know, fuel and human capital costs. So the only way that we can help this is to focus on size of wallet, things that help grow our customers' size of wallet. This is another case where I like to look in other industries. I think that, you know, in the kind of sales software industry, software as a service industry, I think there's some great examples. This is Jeff Bezos from Amazon. We're not competitor obsessed, we're customer obsessed. I love that term, that successful customers equal successful businesses. You know, the difference between this idea of growing size of wallet is the difference between focusing on what your customer spends versus what they earn. focusing on the cost of your product, the difference between focusing on the cost of your product versus the value of your product, focusing on your success versus their success, focusing on how much a competitor charges versus how much the customer can spend, focusing on the cost of a transaction versus the value of a growing customer. At the end of the day, when customers are successful, they will make more. When they make more, they will have the ability to spend more. A fantastic organization that really driving this is Salesforce. This looks like it's like a Disney event. This is Dreamforce. This is their large national event. 150,000 people flocking to San Francisco, all to learn about how they can grow their businesses. You know, Mark Benioff, who's the CEO of Salesforce, puts it really well. You know, that it's amazing to consider that no matter what size customer we were pitching or where in the world we were selling, a singular ideal drove all of our accomplishments. We never sold features. We sold the customer success. Their belief is that if they can make their customers more profitable, they will spend more. It's the same thing holds true in agriculture. You know, this is another kind of some data that supports this, like growing companies are more likely to prioritize customer success. We see it, you know, company revenue is growing, that customer success is the most significantly important by a long shot. So again, as an increasing number of new and existing ag organizations look to grow their businesses, especially in these value-added or non-essential areas, which is where a lot of growth is trying to be taking place, that focus needs to shift away from carving off or increasing, you know, a share from a finite wallet to expanding the size of that wallet altogether. How do we help our farmer customers become more profitable? How do we help them make more money? So we got time for a couple questions here, and then I could finish off with the last couple.
I think that last trend, growing size of wallet, could be a PD event all on its own. So maybe we'll hit you up for another one just on that. It's full of good stuff there, and it's the product-oriented company versus a customer-oriented company is essentially what it is. So
absolutely,
lots of good thinking there. I've got a question from earlier on from our good friend Scott Gilmore from AIG. And I actually think that his team could answer this question, but I'm going to ask it to you anyways, David. So he was asking if you saw a significant shift away from traditional marketing practices based on the new normal changing workforce. And I know that AGI is an example and has done a lot of work in this. They've given a PD event themselves in terms of how they've pivoted to have that new online experience for their farmer customers. But what are your thoughts when it comes to trends for the years to come as it relates to digital marketing?
Yeah, we have absolutely seen additional shift to non-traditional. Some of it forced, of course. Like if you do consider, you know, trade shows, some of the belly-to-belly events and stuff as being traditional, definitely a move away from that. You know, interestingly enough, though, like ag research still supports that the traditional does play a role in the decision making, the buyer's journey, kind of in decision making. And so I don't think you're ever going to see a pure shift away, but I do think that we are seeing a greater use of and a better use of non-traditional means. I think that we're also seeing maybe a more right sizing of the budgets which is probably more importantly, that I think for a long time they were significantly shifted towards to traditional. You know, a lot of media and marketing dollars in traditional where maybe the return on investment wasn't there. So again, not getting rid of it altogether, but maybe downsizing it and shifting more towards digital.
One other question, we're actually going to go back in time a little bit to the culture. Eric wants to know, how do new employees that are working remotely best be introduced to company culture?
That is a fantastic question. And it is it is a difficult one. This is something that we are, as ThinkShift, we've been, trying to wrap our head around is how do we maintain a strong culture in a distributed workforce environment. I think that, a big part of it is a few things. Repetition. You can't over communicate culture. It takes time. It's not just one introduction, it's probably multiple introductions. It is probably multiple touch points. It is let them connect with multiple senior leaders who can talk about it. I think another part is have meetings or have pieces that where culture is purely the focus. Have just a cultural event for your organization. Don't muddy it with something else. Just purely have these events that kind of help you invest in culture. Those are some of the ones that again we've been utilizing. That idea. I don't know where the term came from, but the greatest fallacy with communication is that it's actually happened. This is one of the beliefs that we have, and so you can't over communicate it. Drive home culture as frequently and as often as possible.
All right, thanks. In the interest of time, we can keep moving.
Perfect. So trend number 6, so moving from Marcom to sales enablement. Again, another really interesting one. And the situation analysis, like really that unconscious competence is no longer enough. And what I mean by this is there's this model that I love, this Deming's model. So he has this quadrant model that looks at, two different aspects. So you're either conscious or unconscious, competent or incompetent. And really the idea is that you could be unconsciously competent. You could achieve things, you could be achieving things, but not necessarily know how you're doing it. That you're good at doing things, but again, you're unconsciously doing so. A good example of this is driving. Most of us who've driven for a long time, we are doing so unconsciously. We don't think about, how hard we need to push the gas anymore. We don't think about shoulder checking. We don't think about those things. We're unconsciously competent about it. Marketing, I think, falls in this area a lot. We have a lot of marketing that we do that we don't necessarily know if it works or exactly how it works. Conscious competence on the other side is that you are competent, but you actually know exactly how you are. You're achieving things, but you know exactly how you're achieving them. Below is unconscious incompetence. So this is, of course, the worst box you could fall in because you aren't achieving what you need to achieve. And again, you don't know how to achieve what you need to achieve. So you don't even know how to pull yourself out of it. You don't know how. So this is one of the issues that happens if you are competent and unconsciously so, if things change and all of a sudden, so as a marketer, if you don't know how you're achieving success, and things change on you and all of a sudden you're no longer achieving success and you fall into unconscious incompetence, you don't know where to start to change or to turn that around. The other side is conscious incompetence. Is you're not achieving things, but at least you know where and why you aren't. And the benefit of that is it is much easier to move back to a state of conscious competence if you were conscious to begin with, that you know how to bootstrap yourself back up. This is important. This is one of the reasons why I think we're seeing a shift from this idea of Marcom to sales enablement. Now, what do I mean by Marcom? There's a difference here quickly between marketing communications and marketing or strategic marketing. Strategic marketing, again, involving the disciplines of market identification, segmentation, product development, pricing, all those things. It is critical. It is important to businesses. It is not going anywhere. That will absolutely be important. Marcom, or marketing communications, involves advertising, campaigning, tactical development, execution, and more. It is a means of achieving a larger plan or strategy. And therefore, it comes into question when other or more effective means become available. One of the things we've seen is that when budgets get cut, it is generally Marcom that feels it, not strategic marketing. So Marcom has for a long time struggled to provide firm ROI metrics to prove success. We've generally relied on metrics like awareness, brand recall or affinity, engagement, so whether that's tactical or online interaction, reach, such as views, impressions, clicks, to measure whether we're successful. Problem with these metrics is that they are at best, they provide a correlation to sales and not a direct causation. They may correlate to sales, that we did some of this stuff and sales seem to go up, but we can't say that they caused it. This has caused a shift in many industries towards more results-driven disciplines such as sales enablement. It really is this consciously competent sales support. Sales enablement is best defined by its much deeper connection to sales, functioning as a feeder of the sales funnel versus the creator of awareness and engagement. In this discipline, advertising, campaigning, and tactical execution, they're still performed, but only as they're required to either drive new leads into the funnel, further progress leads through the funnel, and or increase the quality of leads as a means of improving conversion rates throughout the funnel. It's all about connecting it to sales, having a direct impact on it. While Marcom coordinates much of its efforts around campaigns, events, and launches, an annual Marcom plan is created independently. Sales enablement coordinates its efforts around the sales process and a service level agreement created in unison with the sales team. From a measurement perspective, sales enablement has a direct connection to the sales, given the goals and objectives are reverse engineered from sales goals that are the measurable performance for sales process. If we look at the sales processes, the example sales process, we would reverse engineer goals and know that sales enablement looks at how many marketing leads, MQLs, do we need to generate a certain number of sales qualified leads, to generate a certain number of proposals, to lead to a certain number of pitches. We also kind of looking at that sales sequence prospecting. How do we improve kind of people coming into the funnel? This is more sales enablement. This is sales enablement and not Marcom. A service level agreement, and I could share an example of this after. Service level agreement really looks at assigning shared goals and in specific goals for the marketing and the sales team and how they work together. So again, if the sales team wants 30 demos per month, the marketing team may say, okay, we know that we need to drive an average number of 7,000 landing page views a month to get 300 leads per month to drive 30 demos. So again, these things are directly correlated, directly connected, directly established with the sales team. The initiatives that the marketing team focuses on are then really directly connected as well. Staying accountable. One of the interesting parts is that in sales enablement, the marketing and sales team meet frequently. They work together. They work together a lot. They create the plans together. They manage the plans together. They execute the plans together. Even looking at the communications channels that they'll use, that they'll utilize to not just drive leads, but to communicate with each other. There are significant benefits to this approach. It allows businesses to more effectively measure their marketing communications efforts by directly connecting them to their sales efforts. It applies, this is the part that I love, which is the conscious competence side. It applies mathematical rigor to a more subjective discipline. It allows us to turn marketing into math. Businesses can measure and identify what works and what doesn't, and understand exactly how they can reliably replicate results year after year. Again, as we see that organizations are going to demand greater returns, we are seeing this in other industries. There's going to be a shift from Marcom to sales enablement, and I think ag, it's just a matter of time. I'm already seeing this in some organizations, AGI being a great example of it. And finally, embracing customer centricity. I've kind of touched on this throughout of many of these trends, and so I'll go through this quickly, but I think this one is absolutely critical. In agriculture, there's always been this longstanding debate, the customer versus the channel versus the consumer. Who takes precedence? Who are we ultimately working for? Who do we base decisions around? Is it the customer? And really, in this case, the farmer, the rancher, the grower who purchases ag products and produces the world's food supply? Do we base decisions on the channel, on the ag retailers, the life science companies, the equipment manufacturers, those who create these products, those who produce the products, those who process these products, the inputs? Or do we base it on the consumer, the population of individuals and animals that consume the products that ag generates? I would suggest, if you go to any farm forum or Twitter conversation, you'll see that there's a hot debate between many farmers that feel that decision making is primarily driven in ag by the channel or the consumer, not by the customer. These decisions, and what types of decisions I'm talking about products and services. Are product decisions driven by what the farmer customer wants and needs, or what agribusiness can make from them? Do product prices and bundles drive greater benefit to the maker, the seller, or the user? Placement. Are farmer customers able to purchase and receive the products and services where and how they want? This is, I think, one of the big things that has held back e-commerce. Is, a lot of organizations didn't want to invest in e-commerce because of the price involved, even though it may be the best thing. It would provide a much better experience for farmers. The process of selling, servicing, and supporting ag products optimized to the farmer or the channel? Is the farmer receiving the customer experience they desire? Again, there's ongoing, we've had this debate with a lot of our manufacturer customers of who is the customer, the farmer versus the retailer. It's a good example of who takes precedence. One of the things, this idea of customer centricity is all about placing customers at the center of your business. This goes back to that size of wallet piece. What is it? Customer centricity is when every person within the entire organization thinks about how their actions and decisions will affect the customer experience. It's really based on this desire to know as much about the customer as possible, so that we can build and tailor the business and the offerings around what they want and what delivers the best value and experience to the customer. Disney is such a great example of this. They really believe in customer centricity. Deciding to invest in e-commerce because it can make us money versus because it delivers greater value to our customers. That's a great example of like what is driving the decision. One of the terms that's used a lot in customer centricity is this idea of the single source of truth. Single source of truth was something that Salesforce developed, and it's that the heart of customer understanding is data. That especially nowadays, we can get data more easily and more readily than ever before. And that relative knowledge isn't enough, as being able to relate to someone still doesn't tell us about their specific needs, wants, and desires. We need to know more. We need harder, more concrete evidence. Again, like I said, that for agri-marketers, we have more tools at our disposal now to collect data and to consolidate it and to review it and to process it than ever before. Again, Google and website analytics, automated marketing analytics, advertising platform analytics, content consumption data, Salesforce data, loyalty program data, customer service data. We need to start mining this data, putting it together, and using this to really see what the single source of truth, what that customer wants, and start building for them. Again, that single source of truth is collecting, amalgamating, and attributing data from various sources to a single customer. If I can get data from all these different touch points about you, the customer, I can shape an experience specific to you and value specific to you. Think of Amazon, think of Netflix, think about how they tailor the experience specifically to you. It provides businesses with a 360-degree understanding of a customer's reality and allows us to create experiences to attract, engage, and delight them throughout the process. One of the things is amazing, and it is not out of the realm of possibility for agriculture, is using tools like Einstein Analytics. Einstein Analytics is a Salesforce tool that can use this data to provide predictive analytics And what do I mean by predictive analytics? And a good example is that Salesforce Einstein program. It could instantly notify sales reps what they should discuss with customers based on subject matter that is trending live within various data sources. It could instantly pick up on if they're seeing that in the notes of sales reps that sclerotinia pressure is increased or that a certain subject is increased, they could instantly send an alert to all sales reps and say, listen, this is a hot button issue right now. It's a great example. This is a HubSpot model, but it looks at this single source of truth, the CRM being kind of single source of truth, and how all aspects of the business can support it. I think that one of the things to just end on, while it can seem scary and maybe sometimes big brother-ish to use data, if it's used correctly, it can significantly enhance our lives and add value to our lives. This is the opportunity I think we have as agri-marketers as it relates to the businesses we serve. And my apologies for running 5 minutes over time.
Thanks, David. Good thing that those extra 5 are in a document, because we never would have fit them in.
Yeah, I know.
If for anyone that's listened to David before, sales and marketing teams coming together really is the thing that he talks a lot about. I love that concept. So we don't have a lot of time, obviously, David, but in a nutshell, can you tell us, for organizations that are not having the sales and marketing team come together as a united front, what's the first step based on what you've seen this happen before in other organizations?
You know what, the first step, I believe, is understanding that they have a shared goal and clearly identifying and articulating that shared goal and identifying how each party feeds to it. I think that there is, in so many cases, marketing teams and sales teams that have differing goals, not conflicting, but differing goals that aren't as connected. I think that they need to understand that they are ultimately out for the same thing, and that by working together they could achieve much more. It seems so basic, but it's absolutely critical. I love David Baker, who was our past CEO, always had a great saying that if you want me at the landing, you better get me at the takeoff. It's so true. It is. If you don't get them at the takeoff, if you don't align around that goal, you're not going to get them at the end.
Right. All right. So David mentioned at the beginning about the farmer persona document that the Think Shift team has created. So David, can I get you to pick a number between 1 and 43?
Yes, 27.
27, beautiful. We will be in touch with lucky number 27 and make the connection there. In lieu of a gift, as CAMA Manitoba likes to do, we donate some dollars to Agriculture in Classroom Manitoba in our speaker's name. So David, we're doing that again for you today, for your time today and your expertise, and willing to share it with the CAMA family. So thank you very much. With that, I think we can come to a close. I want to wish everyone a happy summer and a happy growing season and some business success moving forward. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, everybody.